I spy is a might ally. Lovely little chap called Ty. Right, boy.
That's been a week's work, hasn't it?
I thought about that 5 minutes ago, and I've just executed it to the finest degree. How you doing? You okay?
Yeah. Well, with that introduction, how can I be anything other than?
I've had some
communique
tonight with a close friend. He's not very close.
Oh, right.
I don't really care for him, but he won't listen to this, so it's fine. And he was just talking to me about how he's completely listless when it comes to football. And
Really?
and he says, and I don't think there's a bigger damnation of the game in the view of his COVID-riddled eyes than to say he treats it with the same regard as he does internationals.
Oh,
yeah.
Now you really don't like internationals, do you?
I can't stand it. I can't stand it. I obviously like hazy summers, cider-fueled orgies on the front lawn, with the sun beaming down and burning me back as I'm bent over a huddled mass.
Oh,
but I love all that. I love all that. Some of my finest memories of football.
That's why you have to move every year, isn't it?
It is, yeah. The neighbours won't put up with it. It's mostly because they're not invited. But it's some of my finest memories of football as a youngster are summer tournaments and whatever. But yeah, and I'm a Scotland supporter, and I tell you what, a Scotland supporter. This has been COVID has been a real shot in the arm for Scotland when it comes to both football and rugby. Obviously doing fantastic in the football and beating England at rugby at the weekend. But it's. I find them pointless mid-season. I think they're a waste of time, and I genuinely, even when it comes to some teams that I don't really have time for, I do feel sorry when you see the players pull up with hamstring, this, that, and the other after they've been playing. They've played a Saturday, a Tuesday, a Friday, and they go off to international duty. They get played out of position, and they want to impress because they've been wanting to be an England international or whatever international since they were like 11 years old, and they pull up short, and then they have 3 weeks off because they've got a bad knee or a bad hip or whatever. And I just think it's a complete waste of everyone's time.
Are we in a perverse situation where the club game is more successful, more highly contested than the international game?
So I was just drinking my tea.
Well, it's this level of professionalism that people tune in for week after week. Sorry, no, week.
Are
you still drinking your tea?
I was just burping.
Do you want me to give you a moment? Do you want me to just monologue for a little bit? Are we in this perverse situation where actually, like, if you look at international football, is the quality lower than that of the top divisions? Would the top international side be able to beat the top club sides in the world?
I think we are on the precipice of where the international game has been relegated to a point where I think you're going to start seeing top players say, I'm not playing in the next fortnight for England.
That's controversial.
I think it will happen.
They already do it, don't they, in some ways, by claiming an injury here and there. But,
it's all smoke and mirrors at the minute, but I think soon you'll have, especially if you have someone like, imagine Kane going off to Real Madrid for 175 million or whatever.
Yeah.
And Real Madrid are playing Barcelona at the weekend, and then Spain are playing England are playing the Faroe Islands. And Kane has to play up front, and I think what you'll find is you won't see them hiding behind. Oh, he's got a bit of a tight thigh. I think he will say, "Not this time, lads. Play a 20-year-old or whatever."
Yeah,
I think that will happen.
Who then will score 4 goals for England and against like Faroe Islands or San Marino.
Yeah, and I think when you have as uninspiring a manager as Southgate, players. They won't. It's not that they won't want to play for them, but they're just not excited by it.
You know what? Like, I think this leads me on to having a big think about all sorts of things, really. But really, looking at FA Cup and the League Cup and the obviously the international tournaments as well, have we become sort of league centric? And I think it's undoubted that the League Cup has lost some of its merit. It's good. I tell you what, within the next 10 years, it will be called the Monster EAL Cup. or insert some awful brand. But actually, the FA Cup, which is...
It'll be those, what is it called? Where people piss themselves. Those pads that they wear in their pants.
Maxi pads.
Maxi pad cup. Yeah, is it maxi pad? Yeah, it'll be, and it'll just be like...
Maxi pad trophy.
You just see, and it'll be on Channel 5, obviously. And it'll be like the Maxi Pad final on Channel 5, and it'll be like the Super Bowl where it comes off at half time, and it'll be like, do you piss yourself on the train? If you do, you don't need no embarrassment no longer.
Sneeze with freedom.
And it'll just have the player of the day. It'll have Foden at 33, just with a loaded nappy.
But I quite like that image. But the thing for me, like ultimately that hurts the most is the FA Cup.
Yeah.
Because the FA Cup has held for generations a real special place in all of our hearts. I've got to say it's diminishing in terms of, to the point where, clubs are now using the FA Cup to blood their youngsters more so than they ever have done.
If you got knocked out of the FA Cup like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago to an inferior team, and when I say inferior team, I mean a team that's halfway down the league from where you are, there'd be an inquiry. There'd be, our club is got a bit of a cloud over it at the minute. Now it's like, right, well, what's the next league fixture? That's more important. 3 points are more important.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and I guess the
unless
perverse
you're Karen
nature
Carney,
of that,
who thinks that you get 3 points when you win in the cup.
Now, come on.
What?
Come on. We don't want to incite anything else. Don't want you to be impeached as well. But political.
No.
Oh.
This isn't. Yeah, thanks. This isn't a feminist issue. She's just a terrible commentator, and I don't care when it was. Yeah, Karen.
Yeah. There are lots of them. Gabriel Agbonglahor is another one, isn't he? Who is I put in the same category as her.
You know what he looks like? He can't see. He looks like he's just had a slap. He has this kind of like the bottom half of his face is very inactive. And he constantly looks like he's just had a huge slap. I remember once I got an enormous slap, and I thought it was very similar to when you leave the dentist. And
Who's slapping you?
Listen, bucket of sand, nightclub, 2 women of the night. Let's leave it at that. But no, and you just lose the ability to use the bottom of your jaw. That's what he's like. And when he sits in those talk shite chairs, like kind of like lounging like a student, like talking like he's just proven the existence of God, it just makes me laugh. But anyway, that's by the by. That's my 2 cents.
A bucket of sand.
Leave it.
All right, I'll leave it. You left towels last week, so that was okay.
Yeah.
So, what I think is actually, I think we need to campaign to get the cup competitions back again, and to have that sort of that fever pitch, that desire to win that cup. I miss that.
The thing is,
our team is out of the FA Cup at the moment, and I don't think either of us shed a tear.
And that to me, I just want them to be in a. I want them to be within
position in the league.
Yeah, at the top of their mini league within the league, which is depressing to say, but that's just the truth. The other thing as well is that the real kind of flaw in the whole thing is that if you were looking at the English game from outside, you would think that the quality of the teams was getting closer together, when in fact it's just the investment that the teams are making, and so you'd think that your League 2 or League 1 teams are not that far away from Championship teams, or even not that far from the bottom of the Premiership, and that's just not true. It couldn't be further from the truth, in fact.
No, agreed.
So
before we jump into Joost part 2, and asking Joost a few more questions. I think it'd be worthwhile casting our eye over just quickly the Premier League table. But before that, I've got some quite exciting news for our podcast going forward.
Go on. Is this news to me?
I think it may well be. This probably isn't the best forum to announce it. But one of the things that I've been quite keen on is having a bit of a lower league focus as well, because I think
now we've just slagged them off.
yeah, those tiny clubs down there.
Yeah.
But
no, I love the lower leagues. I love the lower leagues. I've taken great care over the years to always kind of semi-adopt a team
your
that
local
I keep my eye on.
side.
Yeah. Or the very least, where I'm living at that moment, just having a gander type thing. Yeah.
So it's like teams like Arsenal and that sort of thing who need that extra bit of support.
Tiny. But, yeah.
But a good friend of mine, Fran, he's got I'd describe it as a fastidious, factual database of a mind when it comes to the lower league and the lower leagues. And he's actually also visited a lot of their grounds. Would spend, before obviously COVID, most of his Saturdays finding, different. I hesitate to use the word stadiums, but different.
Preying on the local women and stuff like that.
Certainly not.
No, okay.
You got to be nice to him. Go on. But
right.
he's going to be doing a feature for us where he's going to help us get to know some of these local lower league clubs and hopefully boost their following a little bit by people that listening in might want to begin checking in on them. So it'll be a focus each week. I think that's going to be quite exciting. However, there is still action that goes on at the top of the table. And the Premiership is looking and beginning to look a little bit more familiar, isn't it? With Man City sat right at the top. Do you think that little cushion that they've got now is enough to see them through?
Have you seen the interviews with Klopp this week?
Tell me who he's blamed. Tell me who he's blamed now.
So there was a for want of a better phrase, foreign reporter. I don't know where. I couldn't tell what the accent was. I think it was Middle Eastern, but I'm not sure.
Well, he's foreign to us, but we're probably foreign to him.
What a lovely philosophical point. So this foreign bloke was talking all this jazz. No, I'm joking. No, so he was asking him. Apparently, like it was one of those fourth wall kind of like breaking things where Klopp called him out, kind of, and said, "You had two questions and you've just ruined it. You ruined your second one." Because the guy said, "Do you think that you're just going to be chasing top four now? And have you dismissed the idea of winning the title?" Yeah. And he kind of laughed and said, and I'm going to quote, this is about 90% accurate. He says, I'm not going to do the accent. It would just turn into like gay Hitler or something. Which
is where all your accents go.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
They always end up
and he said, "Do you think that's appropriate to talk about right now?" And it was on the back. It was the interview after they lost to Man City, and the guy just said, "Oh, what do you mean?" He said, "That isn't appropriate right now." He said, "You need to be doing some more research before you come and ask these questions because you had two questions and you just ruined one." And then he said, "Oh," and then the guy kind of butted in again and said, "Oh, okay, so are you fighting for top four now?" And he said, "I think that's fairly obvious, don't you?" And then walked away. So he's gone from being one of the most liked managers from an objective point of view, I think, to I've seen some really scathing kind of reports about how he's just turned into a bit of a whining idiot, to be honest.
But do you think? Look, you and I, we spent our first episode talking about Fat Frank and the way he used to whine to the media. Do you think this is also a bit of a symptom of the fact that contractually, if you are a Premiership manager, you have to, rain or shine, no matter how you're feeling, no matter how your team's doing, no matter how much your job is on the line. And we're not talking about people who it's like, I'm not going to be able to pay the mortgage, because these guys are being paid a decent amount. But, it's your job, it's your legacy, all of those things online. You still have to face the media every single week, probably twice before a game and after a game. Yeah. Like, do you think there may be a part of that as well that we just don't think about? That actually imagine in our work, before each day being interviewed by someone, and then like imagine having an absolute mare at work, and then having a room full of people asking us questions about why we had that mare. Are we considering our position? Have we spoken to our boss? Have they spoken to us? Have we lost our team's confidence?
I think that's a slightly false equivalent, because for me it's like the players go through the same thing as well. So if the player falls over the ball and and someone picks it up and kicks it in the net, they're going to have to go and stand in front of the media at the end and they say, "Oh, you shouldn't really have fallen over there, should you?" And they've got to take it on the chin as well. And they're much younger, inexperienced, and of course they get media training to some extent. But I imagine it's hard. There are people that are more gracious than others.
Yeah,
and there always have been. I'm not a big fan of the manager, or what I like to call the pulling the Allardyce, where you get absolutely tanked and then you have a laugh with the media afterwards. I'm not a fan of that. I prefer my manager to be supportive and say and defend the players. For me, what Klopp's doing at the minute is, I think he's a clever guy.
Yeah,
I didn't like his attitude in that at all.
Yeah,
but we're talking about him and we're not talking about the terrible players.
Yeah.
And that might be quite clever, actually. That might be quite clever.
Yeah. Okay.
I think he might be dragging the opinions towards him, as opposed, and his players get to go home conscience-free, apart from Mo Salah, who should have a guilty conscience from now until forever.
Is that because he fell over and got a penalty?
It's because you know how you don't like being touched.
Yeah. No, I really don't.
That's officially a Salah now, because I touched you in a very similar way to which he was touched in that match, and it's perfectly legal before anybody sends us a message. And he went down, and actually what I started to do was do a little bit of an inventory in my mind of thinking, actually, yeah, he is very soft when it comes to stuff like that. He's an incredible player. But it just seems like this is so invasive and creeping into the game. It's rubbish.
Listen, that for me is an issue for the lawmakers, not those that are playing the game. I think this is one of the interesting things when we speak to probably going back to speaking to one of the professors of philosophy we've spoken to before in our previous podcast. I think that's something that it's worth pushing into a little bit more. That the difference between the rules of the game and the spirit of the game. And in professional sport, is there such a thing as the spirit of the game? Because if you do something which is abominable, abominable.
That is one syllable at a time, my friend.
Abominable. If you do something that most supporters would look at and think, oh, that just doesn't sit right, and if it's against the spirit of the game, but it's completely within the rules of the game, then actually, should we blame that player or not?
I think,
or should we blame the rule makers?
I think the difference comes in the kind of player. Now, this might be a bit hypocritical or be a double standard, but I feel like if someone's bang average, and they throw themselves to the floor and the referee gets taken in by it, I kind of let that go. You won't see Ibrahimovic throwing himself to the floor. You won't see Leo Messi throwing himself to the floor. You don't see Cristiano Ronaldo. I feel like if you want to move into that top echelon, this is the Grealish problem. This is the Grealish problem. Like, I think Grealish is one of the most talented players in the Premiership. Fact. But he will never, ever be anyone that I desire to move to my club or I think should be given that kind of status on the very top stage. I can't imagine him... maybe he'd do very well in the Champions League. I'm not sure, but he won't ever be seen as anything other than a bit of a shyster that has loads of potential, but doesn't ever quite meet it until he just has a bit more integrity about him.
Yeah,
that's where I come from with it.
Fair enough. Yeah. But for me, I think ultimately, if the laws don't reflect the spirit of the game, then it's an issue for the lawmakers. Well, and you always have someone that will fill the gaps. So Salah is doing it, Grealish is doing it, and we don't like them, and yes, we don't like it, but it works within the laws. What's really interesting is how much is the degrees in which we don't like it. And you might be different to me, Stu, but I hate it when he's doing it for Villa, but I won't mind it if he's doing it for England. Well, that's just your good old-fashioned double standard, right there. Oh, yeah. Should we talk to Joost? Yeah, let's talk. Before we talk to Joost, I just want to say one other thing. I've got a bit of a bombshell for you, if you don't mind. I am ready. So, I've been talking to our favourite philosopher, Mr. Benjamin Ferguson. Oh, not Big Benny F. Benji Ferg, as I call him. We can't say that because he's an actual professor, mate. He is a professor, and he's forgotten more than we know. So, okay. But I was
kind of proposing to him certain things that we'd like to do on this podcast. I want to have an extended conversation with him about VAR, and I think he'll be up for that. Yep. And that's interesting philosophically, because as an American, he finds that fascinating, that there is like inbuilt kind of like justice systems that are completely unjust.
Yep.
But also he's going to crop up in a series of kind of sound bites, little gobbets, if you want, of philosophy, in which he's going to tackle such things as: how does justice work in football? Are players' wages moral? How does football mirror society? And is football anti-intellectual? Those kinds of questions. But that's all to come in the future. So, you know, he's our favourite philosopher, isn't he? Would you say?
I think he is, because he
entertains us.
Well, yeah, he's the most gentle of the philosophers we've spoken to in rephrasing the questions that we ask him.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No. He very much, when we've already spoken about nappy wearing, he very gently rips the sides off, and before you've even blinked, he's replaced it, and the piss-sodden material is gone, and you don't even notice. That's an analogy.
You've got a wonderful way with words. You're a lyricist.
Well, in my spare time.
So,
can we just
as
before we move on
a reminder
to Joost? Just before we move on, we were talking about Man City at the top of the table. Do you want to just break down the table a little bit of some of the movement that's occurred?
Well, I think we're beginning to see the bottom three are in real dire straits. Where there's still a lot of mutability at the top below Man City. I think
there's 3 leagues, aren't there?
Man City have got to throw this away, really, at this stage.
But
5
which
points
to be
clear
fair,
of Man United with a game in hand.
If I was second, third, or fourth, I would be thinking Man City's beginning of their season was dreadful. So that might still come about.
Yeah. Surprise package for me is West Ham. I think they're doing particularly well.
Do you think they're going to cling on to that form?
No, I don't think so. No. However, it is really dependent on the teams below them finding a bit of a run of consistency. So Everton, I think, are going to struggle for that level of consistency. Tottenham could do that. You just know that they've got that capability to do that. Aston Villa... Go on.
Yeah.
What were you going to say about Tottenham?
For me, Tottenham are going to win more. They're going to win more than they draw and lose. Tottenham can tuck away a team by a good couple of goals very easily on a Saturday. You know,
is Tottenham being 8th with probably the best strike partnership in the world? Is that an indictment on the rest of the team?
Oh wow. I think it's a big claim to say it's the best strike partnership in the world.
It is a big claim, and I'm willing to stand by it. But yeah, no, I think that's fine. Like I think I'm the son in this, so I think it's a bit like you and me. I think you could talk into a microphone for over an hour, and it would be okay. I think were I to do that quite quickly, there'd be nurses from the NHS calling round to wheel me away and put something in my mouth so I don't bite my tongue. But anyway, I think going down, looking at who's below, Aston Villa and Leeds are both fairly inconsistent actually at the moment in terms of their results.
It's interesting because I think that between Aston Villa and Leeds, what you're going to have is, I think both of them, Villa have done really well this season.
Absolutely.
And I think they're both going to go on a mini streak, and I think you'll see one or both of them rising to 5th and 6th, something like that, and then it'll be about holding your nerve. Yeah. And I think that maybe experience might tell in that moment. That's why West Ham will fall away.
Yeah.
Because I think, Spurs have been there, they've done it.
And then we all just laugh at Arsenal, who are sat below that.
Oh.
And then, so as you go down, there's this extra sort of strange mini league from 29 points down, sort of Southampton down to Burnley. But then you drop off a cliff edge. From Burnley on 23 points, you've got Fulham on 15. And for teams that are at the lower end of the table in the Premiership, points are so hard to come by. And
so let's contextualise this. So on Saturday, what we have is Leicester against Liverpool.
Yeah.
It's a big game, obviously. Like Liverpool must win. I don't think that's too harsh to say. Massive game, Palace against Burnley. If Burnley win that and Fulham don't get a result, then that's too much, isn't it?
Well,
that's too much.
You're looking at an 11-point gap at that point,
Yeah.
which is significant, because getting 11 points on its own in the Premiership when you're struggling for a point anyway is difficult. But doing that in the absence of those above you picking up points here and there is really difficult as well. So it's not at the moment that sort of that 8-point gap isn't an 8-point gap, because Burnley will pick up a score here or there. Newcastle, remarkably, will pick up a score here or there. After our diatribe against them that other week, they went and won a game. But again, I'm happy.
And then
with that.
you've got Man City against Spurs, which you can't really look past Man City for that.
No.
And then you've got a really tantalising game in Brighton against Villa, which Brighton have been on good form lately, but I still would fancy Villa to win that one.
For me, it's got draw written all over it. But that's our gut feelings, and that we're sort of with absolutely no evidence and sort of very little preparation or thought.
I have less than no evidence.
Yeah.
Because even my gut feeling tends to be wrong.
Yeah.
And laboured.
Yeah.
All right.
Because you were singing Sheffield United's praises. But anyway, that's fine.
I'll put a tenner on them getting out of it.
Well, that would be worth quite a bit if they manage it, but they won't.
Yeah, they will.
If there was somebody who embodied the complete opposite of what this last 15 minutes has represented, I think it's a man called Joost van der Leij. Those of you who haven't listened to our first part 1 with Joost, I recommend you pause here, go back to part 1 and listen to that. But it'd be good for Joost just to briefly introduce himself once again.
My name is Joost van der Leij, and as a philosopher of statistics, I am helping football clubs find the right players for them using data scouting.
So Joost last week was really helpful in terms of nailing down the difference between a statistical approach. His philosophy is all around that statistical models, feedback loops, all those things. And my favourite thing that came up in that conversation was when we asked him, you've got £15 million as a Premiership chairman to buy a midfielder. Who should we going to buy? Who should we be going on to buy? He just, for 5 minutes, spoke to us about why that question was completely wrong, and ended up concluding that the best thing to do would be to buy a Belgian club.
Yeah.
And I believed him at the end, to the point where I started thinking about going to do that, then realised I've got a shortage of £15 million. But that's definitely one of the first things I would do if I did that. But one of the things that helps us know and sort of get to know Joost a little bit more, and a scenario of that was particularly one of the things he spoke about to me in our initial conversation was about Portugal in Euro 2016. And everybody, Portugal versus France, everybody had their money on France to win. They had a team full of other superstars there. Their route to the final was they played in much more confident and strong style. But actually, Joost's system that he's put together predicted that Portugal would win. And one of the things that came up was the fact that Portugal would win, and the percentages, the chances of them winning were higher if Ronaldo didn't play, remarkably. And that really fascinated me. So I wanted to ask him a little bit more about that. So I asked him, you predicted that Portugal would win the 2016 Euro finals. How did you come to that conclusion? Philosophically, systematically, how did you get to that point?
So with Bayesian statistics, the first thing you do is build a Bayesian model that will predict the future. And during the European Championships of 2016, I built first a Bayesian model for players, and unlike all other football statistics, we don't look at what players do. We look at actually what kind of results are established on the pitch, positive results, negative results, and then we reverse engineer and calculate which player contributed to those results. And then it's very easy. If you contribute more to positive results than negative results, we find you a better player. And if you contribute more to negative results on the pitch than positive results, we don't like you that much. And then we have a Bayesian model that predicts the match outcomes. And it uses as input all the data from the players. So from all 22 players on the pitch, we have the Bayesian model, player model. And the outcome of that player model we put into the match model. And then it calculates which team is most likely to win the match. And what really got me going in 2016 was the fact that in the final, France versus Portugal, my model said that Portugal was more likely to win than France, while France was by far the team to beat. And because we can do the whole Bayesian model in real time, when after 20 minutes Ronaldo was substituted, the model actually predicted that the chance of Portugal winning was increased. Ronaldo, great player, but he did not play that well during the 2016 European Championship. So for me, that really made an impression to me, and then that was basically the start sign to get into the field of football.
Are we looking behind the curtain and seeing the Wizard of Oz?
It's interesting. It's incredible, really, when you think about it.
So, I think the thing for me is that one of the things that you and I have spoken about, even tonight, just before we came on the podcast, was credulity and incredulity, and how credulous people can sometimes frustrate us. There's a sense of no, you need to be incredulous. You need to be skeptical. You need to think these things through. And I think both of us like to think that we are incredulous people rather than credulous people. But I think when it comes to football, I don't want to speak for you. I'm purposefully credulous at times, and I can hear what Joost is saying, and I can appreciate the beauty in some ways of this statistical model that is right more times than it's not, because it's mathematics, it's modelling, it's chances, it's statistics, it's opportunities, it's and over time it will be proved right more and more with occasional outliers here or there. But my love for the outliers and that sort of desire for the magic and the fact that anything could potentially happen, which obviously these models still allow for, makes me almost want to put the curtain back and pretend that I never looked behind it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think I know what you mean. Like, I know when I open my mouth or when I think something, and I know I'm purposefully lying to myself because it's wishful thinking. This is why I find this concept so alien to me, this idea of impassionate, objective truth within football. Even if it sounds counterintuitive, it's kind of scary, and I guess philosophically it might lean towards a de-romanticizing of the game and almost enjoying being wrong at times. I don't know. It's complicated. I've never looked at football like this before, ever.
So one of the things that it puts me in mind of is, do you ever play those in moments of absolute supreme boredom? But back when we used to have desktop computers, you used to have like that card game Hearts, where you'd play against the computer. And if you put the difficulty on high, one of the things that happened is it basically made you have the wrong cards. Like, so the game was rigged against you. Like, mathematically, it was almost impossible to win. And it was like, it also made me think of playing chess against a grandmaster. Like, they could, not only are they going to tell you that they're going to win, but they will tell you in how many moves. And there's nothing you can do. That they've worked that out already. There's something quite horrible, I think, from the romantic perspective, when you apply that to football. And I think for a lot of our fans, football is linked inextricably with romanticism. But actually, there is this sort of statistical underpinning. Is it as scripted in some ways as Joost is making out?
Well, if it wasn't, he wouldn't have a job, would he?
No, it's a fair shout. It's a fair shout.
Yeah, and so I think one thing that's interesting is that these kind of data analysts, and he's a very special kind of one. He's very, very specific and very unique. But I'm seeing more and more, and it's interesting because I made a quite flippant comment the other day to you on this, where I said, well, maybe in the future teams will employ more people like him. And I've been actually looking out, and I can see now that that they're everywhere.
Yeah,
they're absolutely everywhere, and they're looking, whether it's scouting or whether it's analysing retrospectively or analysing the future fixtures or analysing that kind of how very specific sets of players will take on the other very specific set of players in that one circumstance. I think the age of the best 11 is dying, and I think we're moving towards a more American kind of culture of we've got a squad of 25 that we will utilise in very specific ways. Yeah. I think that's where it's going as well.
And so like people like Joost are being paid to go into clubs, whereas people like you and I are like we're
being paid to stay away.
We're paying our own money to go and watch the teams. I need to go. Have I found my shoes? I've lost my shoes. I'll just go without them. Here's my 45 quid. Here we go. It's partially blocked, but it's okay. I can see past the stanchion.
See, what's the irony here is that you're just doing your real voice now. Not your posh radio voice.
The hospital voice. The other thing that I was quite interested in previous weeks, we've spoken a little bit about strong link and weak link sports, and so sort of going down the rabbit hole a little bit further, I wanted to find out what Joost's sort of impression was around the difference between a weak link sport and a strong link sport. And just briefly, a weak link sport is basically a sport where to improve a team, the best thing that you can do is improve the weakest players, so that actually if the weakest players get better, your chances of winning are higher. So football is generally considered to be a weak link sport. It makes more sense to improve the weaker players from your team, because actually in terms of the amount of goal chances that are available in a game, there's all sorts of reasons why. Whereas a game like basketball, for example, is a strong link sport because there's so many opportunities to score, because it's a smaller amount of people on the team. It's better to spend all of your money and your resources on one amazing player. So it's better to buy Michael Jordan and have 4 players who are dross. But you've got Michael Jordan who will score all of your points and probably defend as well. And so I asked Joost, basketball is a strong link sport where it makes sense to spend more on a single superstar, yet football is considered to be a weak link sport where it seems to increase chances of success if you strengthen from your weakest player up. To what extent do you agree with that, Joost?
So some people think of basketball as a strong link sport and football as a weak link sport, in the sense that basketball you can improve the team by just hiring one superstar, and in football it's better to improve the weakest link. But I thought about it and I don't agree with it. The reason is that when we use our Bayesian statistics to look at teams, every team has 1 or 2 players playing that are the weakest link. That's of course by definition the case, but they're actually terrible players according to our statistics. And we have a system we call the FBM, Football Behavior Management Score. And it's a number between 0 and 10, 10 being the best player. We never have seen a 10. Messi and stuff, they're all 9 points something players. But you can also see that even the top teams, they do put people on the pitch who score a 1 or a 2 and are quite bad players, in the sense that they contribute a lot to negative results on the pitch. And we think that, of course, you will improve the team if you replace those players. Nevertheless, they still function. Yeah? Even in Manchester City, there are a couple of players who score very low in our Bayesian statistics, or in Liverpool, or all the top teams. So that shows that even weak players can still be part of the team without the team performing badly. Of course, if you have too many bad players, that is going to be an issue. But we can show that actually it doesn't matter whether you improve the weakest player and you replace him, substitute him with a better player, or whether you replace an average player with a superstar player. As long as basically the probabilities that they will contribute to the team increase in the same level, it's highly likely that the team will improve as good as that. And so, to make it clear, while you can improve the team, definitely, we can actually see at the starting 11s whether the managers actually look at data or not at all. But in football, you can really improve the team by improving any player. So it doesn't matter whether you're improving a bad player or a average player or a superstar player. If you put in a better player, then it's highly likely the team will perform better. Of course, if you replace a bad player with a superstar player, then the jump in the probabilities is such a big step that the team will move ahead also with a much bigger step. But in reality, that is very hard to do. But if you would improve the bad player in the same way as so say that you add 10 percentage points to the probability of finishing, then it doesn't matter if you improve that for a superstar or a bad player or an average player.
One of the things that you and I have, there's a particular player that you and I have spoken about quite a bit. They play for Leeds United, and he's there at the moment. He's their left back. He's often played when other players are injured, and so he's brought in somewhere along the left wing. He's called Alioski.
You're talking about this like who would live in a house like this. You're talking about it like carry on. You just say Alioski. Go on.
All right, well, we'll start again. Right, there's a player who plays for Leeds called Alioski who plays left back.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And who would no? He basically, like, for me, he screams lower league footballer. Like he doesn't seem to be that fast.
What, literally?
He doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't seem to be that good at thinking on his feet. He quite often seems to leave his winger behind the man that he's marking, and he's desperately trying to get back again. He sometimes seems to make rash decisions, but looking and trying to think a little bit more like Joost, I'm realising these are all sorts of guts feelings, because when you actually look at quite a lot of the success that Leeds United have, quite often it comes down that left wing. Quite often he's up against some of the top wingers who are kept relatively quiet, mainly because of the whole team effort, the way Leeds sort of hunt in packs. But actually he contributes to good actions in the game, probably more than negative actions. And that's a really interesting way of looking at a footballer. It's like, do they contribute more to the good than they do to the bad? I really wanted him to name who's the ones and the twos in Man City. I really wanted him to name, because I was desperately trying to think. I was like, Zinchenko? Could it be him? Stones, maybe? I don't know. Like, I mean, who?
Not sure it's Stones.
No, I was like,
not lately anyway.
No, like who could be a 1 or a 2? For me, a 1 or a 2 has to sit around a defender, surely, because they're when a defender makes a mistake, it's much more cataclysmic, isn't it? Than when a striker does.
Well, you say that, but I always think it's linking players that stand out when they're doing really badly, and their passes just aren't. Their pass completion is terrible, and they're running around like headless chickens. So,
right,
like Jorginho for Chelsea.
Yeah,
he went from being fantastic to being utter dross. But he went from a 7 or 8 to a 1 or a 2. He's kind of up to about 3 or 4 at the minute.
Is that the Stew modelling system?
Stew meter.
Oh, the stew meter. What are the?
Yeah, give me a player, and I'll give you a score.
Yeah, okay. I'll give you a player. I want you to give me a score, and then I want you to tell me about the categories that you're scoring them on. Can it be any player from any time?
If you want to.
I don't know. Just off the top of my head, Kevin Davies. In his prime.
He's a solid. See, what I always do is I always make it relative. I always think my relative measure in my axes are expectation to reality, and so he's right up there in the top right hand corner of my grid where he just confounds all expectation. So he's a solid 9.
You are a born mathematician, aren't you? You're a lyrical mathematician.
9.
Yeah.
9. Is it out of 10?
Why are you asking me? It's your system. It's your system.
Kevin Davies. What do you reckon he's up to now? Do you reckon we'll get him on the podcast?
I would be less than useless.
I imagine he's a bouncer.
I'd just be screaming into the microphone every time he opened his mouth.
Yeah.
Kevin Davies!
You'd be asking
Davies!
You'd be asking him to play on Tuesday nights, wouldn't
you? Oh, I'd love to play five-a-side football with Kevin Davies.
You wouldn't get a look in. You'd look at him, and he's probably going to be. You're a very small man, if you don't mind me saying. You know, you're emasculatingly small, and I guarantee that he would be an inch or two bigger than you. Or no, maybe would he? Probably about the same size. Actually, he's not quite as squat as you. If you don't mind me using that word.
Do I have any choice? Because you've already thrown it out there. Squat.
So. Yeah, you're like when I think about your body shape, I just think about a rectangle. That's it. Just which is fair enough because I'm a circle. So,
all right.
But
Kevin Davies was like well over 6 foot. Come on.
No, he wasn't.
How did he win so many headers?
He jumped highly.
Oh. Right, well, and on that, we've got a couple more questions for Joost. The second tier of English football, the Championship, is a bit like a casino. British football, should we say, because there's Welsh teams that are in there as well. The second tier of the English and Welsh football is the Championship.
To be fair, he was bang on 6 feet. To be fair to you, mate.
So yeah, thanks. I appreciate that.
Just sorry to interrupt.
No.
Bang on 6 feet. So you are basically standing next to him. You would look like a non-holidayed Oompa Loompa. Because you would be a colourless Oompa Loompa. Like an albino.
An albino Oompa. Oh.
Yeah. He looks good now. Sorry, I'm just looking at him now.
He was always a handsome man. For a man who was in the trenches, who would be elbowing people, who would be pushing them around.
He looks more handsome now.
Well, maybe he's had surgery. That's scurrilous.
No, he's filled out a little bit. And he looks
he's grown well into his face.
Yeah.
Well, Kevin Davies, like a fine wine, only got better with age. As a footballer, and obviously now
in July 2020, he set up KCD Management, a football agency.
So brilliant. I think very soon some of the top players will be on his books because everything he touches turns to gold, and would have done for England if he'd only been given a chance.
Yeah, well.
But here we go again. The fashionable people get played. Defoe, Heskey. Anyway,
listen.
I've got a question for.
We'll come back to
you.
Next week. We'll talk about Kevin Davies.
Look, the Championship is a bit like a casino. Is what I said to him. 24 clubs.
What a lovely image.
Yeah, a nice casino, not like one in Margate. Like I'll go to the casino in Margate. It's like, oh, love.
Yeah. You get an STD test on the door.
We don't pay out on the tips. I've not actually been to a casino in Margate, but I do know there is one there.
What's the best casino you've ever been to?
Can I tell you something? And this won't surprise you.
I think you're the dullest man that's ever lived, so please surprise me.
I have never been in a casino, and my sum total knowledge of casinos is based on Ocean's 11. I didn't even watch the sequels.
Right, okay. No. Okay, good. Carry on.
The last question that we want Joost to answer is self-referential.
Was it Mars bars or Snickers? Because I've got a feeling he's a Mars bar man.
You know what he screams to me? Topic.
What does he scream to in your nightmares? Oh, yeah. Oh, Lion Bar. Star Bar.
Caramac.
Aero.
Dairy milk. Pure. Just straight in.
Turkish Delight.
Oh. Fries. Mint cream.
Fries cream. I'm going to go with a crunchy.
Frenchie? Oh,
crunchy. That was Freudian. You want to give him a Frenchie?
Magic.
What is
it's
that?
magic. I've lost it. Yeah.
Oh, my Lord. Right, that's censored. I'm going to bleep that. If you're listening to me talking right now, that's been bleeped. And I just want to say, on behalf of everyone at the podcast, I say everyone, myself and Jim, we'd like to apologise for the racist, terrifyingly racist slur that you just heard there. We will release a public document that will basically mean that me and Jim are completely outside of any legal mitigation.
You will be, because that's defamation of my own character. Anyway.
Well, I'm not the one using racial slurs on broadcast.
That's
material.
Outrageous. That is not what happened.
I was simply trying to entertain 4 or 5 people that listen to this podcast with some mentions of chocolate that they'll be aware of in their local corner shop. They did not come and will not come in the future because of you for this hideous racial slurring, this gaslighting of our listenership.
So I asked Joost, our podcast is called The Outsiders.
Oh, yeah.
Could you explain a little bit more about the insiders in football clubs and those who are classed as outsiders?
That's a very clever question, if you don't mind me saying.
I don't mind you saying that. More of those sorts of things, I definitely don't mind coming out of your gobble.
So personally, I find the name of the podcast, The Outsiders, interestingly ambiguous, in the sense that that's also how football staff looks at people, because the club themselves, most clubs, they have their own people working for them, and that they really consider them the insiders. But at the same time, you see that more and more clubs are actually hiring outside consultants who are the outsiders. And most of the time to double check their own work. There's a lot of confirmation bias going on within clubs. So most clubs, they will think we're brilliant, we're geniuses, and we figured it all out, and these are the best players. But they also are quite uncertain. The decision making is very difficult within football clubs because the risks are very big. Hire a couple of wrong players or bad players, and you literally risk the end of the club. So small decisions have huge consequences within clubs. That's the reason why it's very difficult. And then most often they nowadays they like to have a outside confirmation from outside consultants, and those are the outsiders within the club. To basically say, you are a genius and you did very, very well. Of course, that's confirmation bias. That's only introducing more risk and increasing the risk, or making the risk bigger. So really smart clubs are actually moving towards the idea, which I think is philosophical, very important, that statistics has to shock people. If you only use statistics to strengthen the viewpoint that you already have, then it's much more likely that you're falling for confirmation bias than actually using statistics in the right way. Only when the statistics, vehemently disagrees with the current opinion, then statistics becomes an important tool within the club. And it doesn't mean that statistics is always right. There are many different sources within the football club. They have the live scouts, the video scouts, data scouts. Then there's the financial people, the decision makers. And they all have an opinion on the player to hire. And they all use Bayesian models, except they use unconscious Bayesian models that their brain produces. And that introduces the risk. So it's much better to actually also have a Bayesian model mathematically running along, so you can double check those intuitive feelings about how probable it is that a player will become successful at the club with an actual mathematical model. Nevertheless, many of those people who work within clubs have very good Bayesian models inside their brain. They see stuff that I find amazing. I am an outsider, literally in the sense that I'm an outside consultant being hired by clubs, but also because I don't really have a football background and a much more philosophy and statistical background. But sometimes when I present players, then we also have a procedure where we use video scouts and data scouts on our own before we present the player to a club, so that we know how they would feel. And then I have had for instance with Heracles, one of their head scout, we presented a striker and we said, no, we don't think that he should play as a striker but as a winger. And then he said, okay, indeed, I don't like him as a striker, but now that you say that he could play as a winger, then you saw him basically imagine or visualize how the match would go with that player as a winger. And then he said, yes, indeed, as a winger, I can see him perform well for our team. And I find that amazing. That is a skill that I don't have. I have to rely on the numbers. But really good scouts, live scouts, they can see players play at one team and then inside their mind are able to transform them and put them into the team that they are scouting for, and then come up with amazing decisions. But again, there is a strong indication, this is also in psychiatry but also in philosophy, it's called the Bayesian brain, that the brain is actually running predictive models pretty much as the way Bayesian models work. And it's very important that you set up a measurement system within the club to discover which people within the club, the insiders, have the best Bayesian model inside their head. So you can put more weight to their input and less weight to the people who think they know a lot about football but come up with the wrong predictions for how players will do. And then, of course, I think it's very important to add a lot of outsiders to that as well, because the more sources all point towards the same direction, the less risk it is to hire the player. And the more disagreement there is between sources, the bigger the risk is. And it doesn't mean that you should not hire the player if there's a lot of disagreement about the player, because you can still have all kinds of reasons to hire the player. But at least the club has to be conscious that they're taking more risk than they would otherwise would take.
So we've consulted all 4 of our listeners, of which we are 50.
Yep.
We are 50%. And
Yeah.
Jim's at 25%
and we did have
himself.
5.
Yeah.
Yeah. We did have 5, but the only way our listenership changes is when people die.
Oh,
So someone died, so we're down to 4, and we're 3 of those.
that's incredible.
And you know what's great? You know what's a real coup? You know what's a real coup?
What's that?
Now we're getting Fran on board.
Yeah.
It's going to go back up to 5.
I'm not entirely certain that Fran's going to listen all the way through.
Okay.
But anyway,
well, tell him it's kind of an obligation.
we've consulted.
Tell him just not listen to the bits that are racial that come out of your mouth,
You need to stop on that.
and we'll be okay.
You need to stop on that. That's not a line that we're going down. Listen, we've consulted,
Yeah.
as Joost has suggested, the more people that are in consensus as to whether or not we should record an episode next week and carry on, or whether we should just pack it in, jack it in.
Yeah.
And the results have been unanimous.
Yeah. What, from the listenership?
of which we are 50%.
Yeah. Only 50% think we should carry on, and it wasn't us.
Yeah, I know. Actually, that's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah, but do you know what I find really shocking?
What's that?
Other than just the language you've used today, and it's as shocking as Kevin Davies' managerial record at Southport, when between October of 2017 and April of 2018 he only won 29% of matches. I think so. It's something you have in common with him. The shocking outlay of your abilities.
Oh, right. Okay, I thought you meant like that. I've only won 29% of the matches that I've managed in Southport.
No,
I think you'll find my percentages.
I find his record shocking, as shocking as I find your language on today's podcast. Once again, if you listen to this and you're offended, please go to the website and send emails. Si's email is on there. It's in the public domain, and any legal kind of
is that the email address?
Recourse.
Is that the email address that Jim set up for us, and I'm still not entirely certain how to access, even though he sent a video. Yeah. Look, to bring us back to some level of normality, I just want to extend a real thanks to Joost for the time that...
I thought you say you, for me.
You are so self-conceited. It is unbelievable. The ego that's just dripping from your mic at the moment. No.
So
I want to thank...
So obviously... Go on.
No, what do you mean, obviously?
No, I was going to say...
You've enraged me there.
Now there's three. Now there's three of us that do the podcast. I feel like we need to kind of start to register Jim's existence with our listeners. He's obviously been incandescent with self-pity and self-loathing this week as an Arsenal supporter. he's wandering the streets.
He went
largely nude.
He went for me.
Down.
Yeah, he went for me on WhatsApp. He wasn't happy with my comments about Arsenal.
Yeah.
No. Truth hurts.
Touche. He's a sickening creature at the minute. He's trying his best, but his best, as with Arsenal, isn't good enough. So
no.
He's done well. He's done well so far.
All right, well that's good.
Thanks, Joost. Thanks, Joost.
And thanks to
Jim.
Joost as well for actually taking time out of his busy schedule, doing lots of different things. We're really excited about the prospect of having a live conversation.
I can't wait.
That'll be videoed.
Yeah, definitely.
And so
I tell you what, talking about video.
No, you're not dropping another bombshell on us right now, are you?
There's one more bombshell coming because obviously Jim has turned into this mythical creature that frankly people tune in just so we can talk about him. Next
he doesn't
week,
exist, does he? In reality, he's a manifestation of your personality.
I got a little puppet with a face on
and an Arsenal top.
No, don't laugh.
All right,
it's a red sock, and what I do is I talk to it, and if I talk just in the right way, it just stands up right.
So the thing is, you've been going on this massive diatribe.
He's got a little face. He's got a little face,
right?
And he's got little arms.
Jim,
hold on very tight.
I have to apologise. I led you down a path that you wanted to go down.
We're doing a watch through. We're doing a watch along, walk through
with the actual Jim, not this weird sock that you're talking about.
We're doing a football threesome next week, where we're going to be watching Arsenal against Leeds United. And we're going to be commentating and gesticulating and gyrating and masticating throughout. So that will be fun. We'll be doing that on Valentines Day, so a special love edition of the podcast.
So that's going to be three of us that are deeply unpopular with our partners.
Yeah. Oh, God, I forgot about that. Yeah. Okay. But that's happening, so there we go. We'll be watching the football anyway, won't we? So we'll be tight with it. What are you doing for Valentine's Day anyway?
It's none of your damn business.
Oh really? I'm gonna go out.
That is incredibly tasteless.
That is tasteless. I'm not ready. I'm going to be going out and buying my fine wife some fine wine and watching the football with you guys. So she can get pissed up in front of the TV watching some kind of costume driver or something.
Yeah. Well, since we're now dwelling solely in stereotypes, I think it's probably best for us to say goodbye.
Well, absolutely. So thanks very much for listening. Thank you, Joost. Thanks, Jim. Thanks for that. And thank you, Si.
Yeah.
And I want you to I want you to take care of yourself in this lockdown situation. Hopefully, we're a few weeks away from being locked out. What?
Locked in? Locked up.
Locked up.
Oh, locked down? Oh.
Yeah.
Anyway, it doesn't matter anyway because existentially we're all just hurtling towards
stuff, don't we? Take care of yourself, mate.
Well, or don't.
Or don't. Because it don't
I'm
matter.
just stuff, really, aren't I?
It's flying through space. It's meat jammed onto bones.
Yeah. For a little bit.
So, until Valentine's Day. See you then.